Hey guys, welcome back. You know what? Let's just dive right into it. First off, let's talk about the new hero, Gryphon. I haven't actually bought him yet, so this is all based off reading his moveset, playing against him, and having him on my own team. But the first thing that comes to my mind when I see him is Kensei, his playstyle with all the shortcuts and dodge attacks and hyper armor and undodgeable properties. It reminds me of Kensei's playstyle, which immediately tells me he's going to be really strong, which, as we all know, he is. Now, I think he's firmly in A tier for duels and either A or S tier for Dominion. His kick and undodgeable mix-up is a really good 50-50 and it's really easy to access, not to mention the high damage from landing the kick. It's reminiscent of Black Pyro's light bash light or light undodgeable mix-up. In fact, it's basically the exact same thing except it guarantees a ton more damage. But other than that, Gryphon doesn't have a whole lot of mix-up potential. Now, his dodge attack is also really good and I see people spamming it a lot. It has really high invincibility frames, it's fast, it does good damage, and it's only a heavy attack, so if he gets parried, it's really not the end of the world for him. So his dodge attack is very much like Kensei's, except obviously the direction that it comes from. I think as time goes on, people will start to get used to him and figure him out, start baiting out those attacks, and they'll start being able to deal with him a lot better. Overall, I think he's a solid hero, and he's got a really good design in terms of aesthetics, so I quite like him. I do personally have a hard time dealing with him at the moment, but I think that's just because he's brand new and I haven't played against him a ton. Yeah, the only thing I would adjust is probably the damage he gets from the kick. I think the follow-up damage he gets from it is just way too high for how easy it is to access the kick and land the kick. So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on Gryphon. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. But anyway, let's move on to the testing ground changes. Now, every one of these heroes needed some sort of change, so I'm glad they addressed them. But the fact that they ignored Aramusha was a little disappointing. But I'll let it slide for now since they finally gave Peacekeeper some love. Let's jump in with Nobushi. So yeah, here's her changes that I'm sure most of you guys have already seen. Basically, her hidden stance is a lot better because it costs half the amount of stamina that it used to. There's some additional chains she can do, she has some soft feint mix-ups, and even some undodgeable properties on her heavies. That's some pretty drastic changes actually. So Nobushi was already pretty decent before the update. I mean, she wasn't amazing, but in the right hands, she could be pretty devastating. The stamina, the chain, the soft feint changes are all good in my opinion. It makes her less one-dimensional and gives her a lot more options other than just her lights, heavy into kick or whatever, right? I mean, I'm sure everyone's really tired of that combo. However, I'm not super pumped about the undodgeable properties. Side heavies are already like kind of undodgeable. You know, you have to dodge the direction they come from at the right time, otherwise it's still going to hit you. And it seems like Ubisoft is kind of just handing out these 50-50 bash / undodgeable mix-ups, which are kind of boring in my opinion. Like that mix-up is just kind of the go-to for, oh, this character needs something to spice them up so they can actually be viable. Let's just give them a bash or an undodgeable mix-up, right? I mean, and it kind of makes sense because it does require you to make a read, but they're kind of just using it as a fix-all for a lot of heroes, and it's just kind of a boring 50-50 mix-up. That is just my opinion, however. It definitely makes her a little stronger, which I can't really complain about. If they keep these changes, then Nobushi looks like she'll probably be, I think, A tier in terms of duels and 1v1s. I don't think it'll make her super strong, like her playstyle is still more or less the same. She still has to open with lights a lot, you can still guard break her hidden stance really easily. So I think the changes are overall pretty decent for Nobushi. Moving on, we've got Peacekeeper. Peacekeeper's buffs were pretty substantial. As we all know, all heavies do a base 5 more damage, so combined with bleed, that's more damage than most of the cast, which is pretty wild, considering she's an assassin. Now, she also got her additional soft feint options from her zone, and her zone attack is now enhanced. That's pretty crazy, because her zone really is a stable combo starter. The biggest change is the addition of the unblockables when your opponent is bleeding, and that is an awesome change. It gives additional pressure and believable feints, but it also requires you to land that bleed first, which opens up a lot of different mix-ups in mind games, right? Because if you're not bleeding, then you know that Peacekeeper is going to want to make that bleed happen, but they can trick you and just go for letting a heavy fly or letting the zone fly, or go for a guard break, right? It opens up a lot of different mix-ups, which I think is really good. One might think that these buffs are a bit too much, and I could be inclined to agree. Her heavies now dish out a lot of damage since they guarantee a bleed, and with unblockables and enhanced zone attacks, she'll be very formidable. I think if these buffs stay, she'll probably be around A tier. A lot of people think she's OP right now with it, but I think that's also probably just because people aren't super used to it right now. But remember, Peacekeeper still has a small health pool. If you get the read for a bleed, that's guaranteed top heavy or side heavy if you're like a warlord or something. So it's still more or less the same PK, but she does just have a higher base damage and a few more mix-up options and more pressure when you're bleeding in the first place. So I think these changes are actually pretty good. We'll see if they stick. I really hope they do. I quite like Peacekeeper. Anyway, let's move on to our big boy Shugoki. Now, there was a lot of debate on this one. I think it's good that they removed the hyper armor on his lights because that was kind of just ridiculous to deal with all the time. It makes him much less frustrating to play against. However, removing the hyper armor from Demon's Embrace was an interesting choice because it basically makes him useless in 1v1 scenarios. Anyone can just option select it or just light attack it and be totally fine because it's such a slow move and it has such a bad recovery that if you do happen to dodge it, right, it's guaranteed heavy or guaranteed guard break. However, he now has a dodge forward heavy and a side dodge bash, which is pretty cool actually. I mean, he's a big boy, so being able to dodge attack. Demon's Embrace might be weak now, but it was totally a crutch move in the first place and took very little skill to use, so I'm not broken about the hyper armor being removed from it. And the addition of the dodge attacks give him a lot more options other than just armoring through everything, which makes for a really boring opponent because you just kind of have to wait. You can't really attack first because he'll hyper armor through it, right? So I think it gives him more options, more variability in his playstyle. He can counterattack better, which I think makes for a more exciting fight overall. So I think he's better overall, honestly. I think he'll take a lot more skill for sure, but he has better counterattack options and it'll definitely be less frustrating to play against for players at all levels, which I think is really good. It's possible they'll revert the Demon's Embrace hyper armor. I wouldn't be broken about that either. I mean, the changes for Shugoki were decent and he's definitely needed a bit of tweaking. We'll see what happens with him. Finally, we got Warden. Now, the Warden changes were definitely a little unexpected. He's always been kind of that top tier duelist some people think is OP. I think he was fine, honestly. He's definitely a little one-dimensional. There aren't really any good reasons to use anything other than dodge bashing or light bashing with the occasional top heavy light parry punish and all that stuff. So the changes now, they removed the back dodge bash, and that is just the best thing to ever happen to Warden. He could counter literally just about any move in the game with a back dodge bash and start his attack, which is just really frustrating to play against. And you know it's going to come every time, and he still gets it anyway because it's such a strong move. So that was great that they got rid of that. Now, to counter that nerf, they decided to give him side unblockables, which do more damage than the top unblockable, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. And he has the ability to chain into the bash from his dash heavy, his zone attack, normal heavies, even his heavy finishers. Now, this is an interesting one that I'm a little conflicted about. On one hand, it makes it useful for him to actually throw heavies. It kind of forces you to be more aggressive so you can get into those combos in the first place, but I feel like it just intensifies the bash spam of an already bash reliant character. I think overall the changes actually make him just a little bit weaker and also less annoying to play against because you don't have to deal with that back dodge bash all the time. I think it takes a little more skill and will definitely make people be more offensive with Warden, which he's desperately needed. That being said, being charged bashed into a top heavy into another bash mix-up doesn't sound super appealing to me, but so far I like the changes to Warden, and I think he'll more or less remain in the same spot in terms of the dual tier list and the Dominion tier list. Honestly, they said like the side unblockable should make it a little better in terms of team fights, but I just don't see it being that helpful in the long run. Overall, the new season's looking pretty good. We got pretty cool new heroes, some much needed changes to some of the heroes, and plenty of new cosmetic items as usual, and most of them are pretty dope from what I've seen. And going forward, I really hope Ubi takes a look at Aramusha and Shinobi. I think they're not in an amazing spot right now. It could definitely use a tune-up. I know Ubi likes to favor the Knights a lot, but it'd be really nice if those two got a change. Again, these are just the testing ground changes and are absolutely subject to not even being put into the game, so we'll see what happens, but let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.